World War II. The occupation of Norway by Nazi Germany started with the German invasion of Norway on the 9th of April 1940, and it ended on the 8th of May 1945. That's just over 5 years of Nazi occupation. Throughout this period, Norway was continuously occupied by the Wehrmacht, which is the German army. Civil rule was effectively assumed by the Reich Commissariat of Norway, which acted in collaboration with a pro-German puppet government. The Norwegian king and the legitimate government continued to operate in exile from London. Norway was largely unprepared for the German Blitzkrieg invasion, and when it came on the night of April 9th, 1940, fighting continued in northern Norway until the 10th of June, when the Norwegian 6th Division surrendered. Amongst the German-occupied territories, this made Norway the country to withstand the German invasion for the longest period of time. That's about 2 months. Pretty impressive for a country that wasn't ready for the German Blitzkrieg. Hitler garrisoned Norway with about 300,000 troops, of which 6,000 were Waffen SS troops for the rest of the war. By occupying Norway, Hitler had ensured the protection of Germany's supply of iron ore from Sweden and had obtained naval and air bases with which to strike at Britain if necessary. Norway was the most heavily fortified country during the war. Several 100,000 German soldiers were stationed in Norway, and a ratio of 1 German soldier for every 8 Norwegians. That's huge. Most German soldiers consider themselves to be pretty fortunate that they were in Norway, particularly because, in comparison with their counterparts, they were experiencing savage combat on the Eastern Front with Russia. As the end of World War II approached, the Germans fought fiercely against the encroaching Soviet forces that had pushed across Finland and Sweden into northern Norway. The Germans embraced a scorched earth policy and burnt entire villages to the ground. The damage to Norwegian infrastructure was tremendous. Exiled Norwegian forces, supported by British and American forces, joined to bolster the Soviet advance until the German capitulation on the 8th of May 1945. The conditions of surrender included that the German High Command agreed to arrest and intern all German and Norwegian Nazi Party members listed by the Allies, disarm and intern all SS troops, and send all German forces to designated areas. At this time, there were no fewer than 400,000 German troops in Norway, which had a population of barely 3 million. By the end of war, 65% of Norway's gross domestic product was intact, as well as large areas were destroyed as a result of the scorched earth policy that the Germans had pursued during their retreat. Moreover, many towns and settlements were damaged or completely destroyed by bombing and fighting. The magnitude of the adversity Norwegians endured during the German occupation has garnered them international respect for their resolve. The Norwegian military and political system were enriched by role models born during those terrible years. Indeed, Norway had new heroes, as the population had all shared hardship to the war. The German occupation also led to Norway abandoning their policy of neutrality, which was formalized when they became a founding member of NATO in 1949. The German occupation led to a commitment to maintain a standing army large enough to realistically defend the country. The K98k Mauser, also known as the Carabiner 98 Kurz. Kurz means short in German. This bolt-action rifle is chambered in the 8x57mm Mauser. It was adopted in 1935 and was a standard service rifle used by the German armed forces. and it remained in service until the end of World War II in 1945. In Norway, during the German capitulation, it's estimated that roughly 325,000 K98k rifles were turned in to Norwegian authorities. When the war concluded, the Norwegian government had vast quantities of German weapons, munitions, and they wisely chose to adopt most of it for their own use. A considerable number of German Mausers were broken down for parts, and the remainder placed through a re-arsenal and repair process. It is estimated that of the 325,000 rifles captured, about 60%, or about 200,000 of them, remained serviceable and reissued at one point or another. Some of them remained in war stocks. In general terms, though, K98k rifles manufactured between late 1943 and early 1945 were torn down for parts because German wartime Mausers between 1943 and 1945 generally did not meet Norwegian quality standards. And you have to place yourself in German shoes at this point in time because the factories had all been bombed. Production was more important than quality. And yeah, these were not great rifles between those years. Initially, the Norwegians issued these rifles in the original 8x57 chambering. But at some point in the late 1940s and early 1950s, Norway adopted the 30-06 round. And one of the reasons for this was that Norway was running out of captured German 8x57mm ammunition. And as for the 30-06 round was becoming the primary military cartridge of its day, so Norway, they adopted it. Starting in 1953, rifles were returned to the Kronsberg Arms Depot, and they were rebarreled to 30-06. The sights were modified for the M2 ball cartridge, 30-06. And this is a 1938 pattern American ammunition that had a flat-based full metal jacket weighing 152 grains. The cartridge, caliber 30 ball M2, achieved a muzzle velocity of 2,805 feet per second, muzzle energy of 2,655 foot-pounds. Its maximum range was approximately 3,400 yards, or about 3,100 meters. Pretty potent. By the end of 1954, all of the K98k rifles in service with the Army, the Norwegian Army, the Norwegian Air Force, would have been issued in 30-06, while the Navy retained the original 8x57 chambering. Changes made during the 30-06 conversion included rebarreling, obviously, to 30-06 barrel, altering the rear sight from an inverted V to a U notch. Much better. Altering the front sight to a taller square post instead of an inverted V, and it was taller because they hadn't calibrated the 30-06 ballistics. The lengthening the trigger guard magazine well to accommodate the 30-06 round, milling a half-moon cut into the rear of the receiver ring to accommodate the 30-06 Spitzer ammunition, milling a flat into the side of the receiver ring to accommodate branch of service markings and a new serial number, cancelling out the old German serial number and adding Norwegian firing proofs, extending the mag well, mill cut in the stock, reserializing the bolt handle and the butt plate to match the new serial number on the receiver, installing a dowel through the dish cut, our area of the stock to reinforce the stock due to the increased recoil of the 30-06 round. In this example, we see a bolt. It may have been actually installed by the Norwegians or the Germans. Also rebluing the rifle and adding a thin coat of varnish to the stock, and they were sanded if required.